Good morning and welcome to PWR Today. It was kind of like a segue. I was going good morning wrestling fans, and then I decided to omit the wrestling fans portion at the very last second and just decided to just do a general good morning. So good morning wrestling fans. Good morning fans that people are not fans of wrestling. We don't want to basically discriminate any part of the population. If you're listening to this and you like wrestling, or if you're listening to this and you hate wrestling, or maybe your neighbor's listening to this and you're just overhearing this from your neighbor. It doesn't matter. If you're hearing us in your ears this morning, we welcome you to our broadcast. This is Matthew Thomas, and I am joined this morning by Linda Kay. Linda, how are you this fine morning?
I am doing tremendous, as I typically do every morning here on PWR Today. Might I add, with that intro, I wasn't sure if you were saying hello, Russ, and then good morning. It's like, if we're going to be taking over Tuesdays, I think it's okay for us to just, have our own intro. I think Meathead would be just fine with that as well.
Exactly. I think that, this is the middle part of the week, and fans are ready for something different, and so this
Excuse
is
me, Wednesdays.
That's
why
you're running. But Tuesday and Wednesday, they run right next to each other, so they're easy to get confused. I don't know if you've listened to the episodes where Meathead talks about his trick to remember which months have 31 days and which months have 30 days. It's something involving his knuckles or something. So I imagine he's probably got like a similar, tactic to remembering the days of the week, like Tuesday and Wednesday and something with his. We'll have to get him to explain that next time he's on the air, because I can't quite remember exactly what his rhyme or reason with his whole knuckle trick, remembering the months that have the 30 and the 30. He tried to explain it, but it just kind of went over my head.
Right. Well, a place where you can enjoy something no matter what day of the week it is, or if it's a month with 28, 29, 30, or 31 days.
I don't know. Why don't you tell us?
That would be collarandelbowbrand.com. They've got the site updated, showing the latest and greatest in wrestling street fashions. Some t-shirts specifically highlighted and featured right now to get you ready, because we're close to spring breaking, and you want to be sporting that awesome, comfortable collar and elbow gear. Go to collarandelbowbrand.com and use promo code LindaK. That's LINDAKAY to save 10% off your order.
So we'll get to spring breaking here in a few minutes when we discuss NXT. But since you just brought it up, does it register weird with you when you hear that term? Like the first handful of times I heard it last night, I thought they were saying spring break-in, which to me sounds like, some type of low budget child movie involving burglars trying to break, like a Home Alone spinoff, except in the springtime instead of Christmas time.
Christmas, yeah. Well, it is. I mean, when I think of spring break, I think more of March, just because that correlated with my college spring break sessions, weeks.
Yeah, because we're in I guess we're technically still in spring, but anyway, I think it's probably because it ends in spring breaking. It's one of those. What do you call the words that it doesn't end in the ing? They omit the G, and they just leave it kind of hanging with the apostrophe at the end of the end. Whatever that's called, I feel like it's just that's kind of where it's getting hung up in my ears. But nevertheless, we had a little bit of a slow news day yesterday, but we do have a story in regards to a comment that Becky Lynch made in an interview with Fightful. She was asked basically the difference between the AEW women's division and the WWE women's division. And I'm just going to read the quote, and then we'll kind of discuss it and break it down and see what our opinions are. So in regards to the question in regards to AEW compared to WWE's women's division, Becky Lynch says, "I wish I could say yes, but unfortunately I don't think they are represented the way we are in regards to AEW's women. They don't get as much time as we get, and frankly, they're not as good as we are," Lynch said, seemingly answering in character when asked if she feels AEW gives her another reason to raise the bar. "We have, certainly on Raw, we have the best women's division in the world. I say that without hesitation in my voice. We have the best women's division in the world. Competition is great, and it's great for there to be another place. And I have a very good friend, Ruby Soho, over there, and I would love to see her as champion one day. I would love to see her get the spotlight she deserves. Competition is always great. Over here, we're on another level. I think the meat of that statement was the first sentence where she says, I wish I could say yes, but unfortunately, I don't think they are represented the way we are. They don't get as much time and as we get, and frankly, they're not as good as we are. That's where a lot of the discussion is centered around. Linda, I want to get your take on Becky's statement there in regards to AEW's women's division, and kind of what you feel when you watch AEW on a weekly basis, their division compared to WWE's.
I mean, I do agree that there's different representation, and that there's the amount of camera time or a certain amount on a specific roster that they just, I mean, despite having YouTube shows or shows, I mean, we've got Rampage, but then there's also the dark matches and whatnot, and just not getting highlighted as frequently on a televised basis. That does, affiliate with this, and that there's a huge roster in WWE too, but I guess there's just that difference where the ones that are getting highlighted are getting a bit more time, or whether it be just on Raw or SmackDown. But then there's also a lot of things like, for example, the Bump or Raw Talk, or just other avenues that I feel that the top women in WWE are getting a little bit more elevation, no pun intended, than some of the AEW women's divisions. But with the Owen Hart Foundation term right now, I mean, that's giving a little extra light on the AEW women as well. But
I feel like it's a AEW seems to have a wider roster, and when I'm watching WWE, it's like, if you're going segment for segment screen time, the women in WWE are probably accounts to a higher percentage on their weekly television shows. I feel like there is more of a variety of both male and female talent in AEW. And I think where AEW kind of suffers a little bit, especially in the women's division, is you've got such a, outside of your champion, you've got such a kind of a mixed bag of assorted talent that you don't necessarily get storylines week to week. We've got Serena Deeb wrestling coming up this week on Dynamite, and it's been probably 3 or 4 weeks since we've seen her on either Rampage or Dynamite, maybe even going back further. So I think what we have with AEW, they're trying to get so many talents in when they can. A lot of times you don't have that weekly buildup of the characters. I mean, we're getting Charlotte and Ronda each week. Now, since Becky's back, we're probably going to get her and Asuka each week. So it's interesting. I know early on, I don't think AEW had a great women's division. It was not something they seemingly highlighted that great. I think they've made great leaps forward here in the last year. And also, too, Becky Lynch is one of the biggest stars in WWE. This could be the company line right now. I know we talked about a while back. What was it? It was on a recap to a Dark Side of the Ring episode. It was when Cena was on Stern, and I forgot who he was talking about. Maybe was it Flair? It wasn't Flair. Who was? It was one of the. It was maybe, was it Canyon maybe? But Cena got some criticism because he was basically kind of toting the company line. And I'm listening to this Becky Lynch quote, and I mean that is an argument they can make. I think AEW has outdone WWE in the last handful of years across quite a few avenues, but I think you can kind of, state claim that WWE has the stronger women's division. So you got to look at this from, how much of this is off the cuff Becky and how much of this is kind of WWE's line right now. It's like, they might have us in this, but we've got a stronger women's division. So just interesting. And I mean, it's, hopefully will lead to if nothing else, I mean, now we're in an era where there's competition, and competition historically makes each individual company stronger. So hopefully this will continue to, both companies continuing to emphasize the women's division.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned Serena Deeb, Hikaru Shida. That rivalry has gone on for a very long time, but yeah, we haven't seen either of them in ring in quite a couple of weeks. We've gotten the vignettes,
Yeah.
promoting their next fight taking place tonight, but yeah, that was, I remember you guys talking about that being a slow burn, something really building. Very, very exciting to see that one, but it may be harder for some of the talents that haven't been in the business quite as long, really haven't had as much established. They're not a name like a Serena Deeb quite yet, that it might be a bit more difficult to get them elevated more.
And
there
I
you go
think,
again.
yeah, and I think that it really compares and contrasts AEW's and WWE's booking, because here's the thing: if that Serena Deeb feud had been on WWE, their format, you would see it every week. There would be, segments every week, and then there would be, a bunch of matches where this person wins, that person wins, the 50-50 booking. AEW, I think they give a little more leeway to the fan, or how do I want to put it? They think the fan's short-term memory is better than WWE does. They don't have to beat you on the head with it every week. And I think that a lot of times AEW, the product feels fresher because of that, because you don't feel like you've gotten every single match that you can see. I mean, WWE, it's rare that you get a matchup within their roster of two people who have never met before. And AEW, that seems to happen quite often, or if it's not the first time they've met, it's been so long ago or in a different company that, it feels new and feels fresh. So I think it's, part of that is a comparison of two company styles, of booking. But speaking of women's action, the women's division on NXT led off the show last night with Nikita Lyons going up against Lash Legend. And if you go back and you watch this match really close at the start, it seemed like they had a little hard time getting started. There was an interesting spot where I believe it was Nikita Lyons had Lash Legend on the ground, just a standard, kind of punching spot. And Lash Legend, I couldn't tell if she wasn't selling the punches or if she was just emphatically trying to push Nikita Lyons off, but something seemed a little bit of a miss there. And there was kind of a little bit of a scary spot where Lyons was kind of pushed to the outside. After that initial start, they kind of seemed to get their bearings, and we would ultimately see Nikita Lyons going over Lash Legend. Interesting. I think this was the first match Nikita Lyons wrestled that we have not seen her signature pin. This was just a standard pin, and that was most likely done because as soon as she got the pin, we would have Natalya enter the ring, attack Nikita Lyons, and then we had Cora Jade come in and intervene. So really trying to, and that set us up for a tag match for next week, where we've got Natalya pairing up with Lash Legends going up against Nikita Lyons and Cora Jade. Linda, your thoughts on this opening match to start the show?
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a hot start. Speaking of stories progressing, we have seen a lot of heat between Nikita and Lash Legend, and I was looking forward to this, and I enjoyed it. First off, a hot start to NXT, and this was the first time not only did Nikita Lyons not get to do her signature finish, but might I add, her finish was tremendous. I don't think I've been in martial arts quite as long as her, but that spinning back kick, it looked awesome. But I'm going to rewind a bit here. It being the first time that Nikita Lyons had a match where she struggled a bit. I mean, it's against her opponent. There's been a lot of the squash matches that she's had early on, or she hasn't. The victory hasn't been too tough for her, I should say. But also with Lash Legend, I know you and me have touched on this before, but our introduction to Lash Legend on NXT was the show, right? Wasn't it Lashing Out with Lash Legend? I think we kind of got to know her more for that talk show segment. We didn't really get to see much in-ring action from her until she was paired up with Amari for the tag, the Dusty Cup Tag Team Tournament. But getting to see her wrestle a bit more and more this time was the first time you really got to see more of what she could do. I gotta say, her look was great too. We know Nikita Lyons got a really nice look. So did Lash Legend. I liked her look a lot as well, and her fire. I think they pair really well as far as in-ring work, different styles. But yeah, some scary parts in that match. But all in all, I mean, it was a brawl, and I didn't think it would be the end of it. And as we saw, it is not. As you mentioned, Natalya does come in after the win by Nikita, so speeding her up. Lash joins in. Got Cora coming out, and that tag match set up next week for Spring Breakin'.
No, and I think you made a really good point too. I think since we've gotten Lash away from that show, and this is not in-ring performance or moveset or anything, but her overall presentation and her confidence in that character seems to pop. Like, she seems to be much more comfortable in that in-ring character on the screen. So I think there's definitely something there. There's definitely something that jumps off the screen. And her and Nikita are very similar stature. So it's interesting to see, like you said, Nikita matched up against somebody of similar size versus, the enhancement talent that she's been predominantly wrestling. The next match would see Von Wagner with Robert Stone going up against Tony D'Angelo. Tony D'Angelo, it's been kind of low key, but this has been one of the NXT 2.0 up-and-comers that's really been pushed. If you go back to Stand and Deliver, he got the victory over Tommaso Ciampa back when he was known as Tommaso Ciampa. I don't know if you guys touched on it yesterday, but
we did not. But
Ciampa, now just going by Ciampa on the main roster, which I'm fine with. It's like, okay, at least it's not a complete different name change. But this would actually see Von Wagner getting the win after interference from Legado del Fantasma. I think this is probably one of the more noteworthy matches last night. D'Angelo, especially since he got the win over Ciampa at Stand and Deliver, has been one of your more protected talents. One of your more pushed new generation NXT 2.0 stars. So pretty big victory here for Von Wagner.
Yeah, and they didn't really say, I should say, the medical reasons that Zion Quinn could not face Tony D, so they inserted Von Wagner to the match, which I found interesting because two heels on another. I'm like, okay, but it ended up working out because it gave a chance for Tony D's the Don. I was gonna say Don, but no, it's the Don. Excuse me, Tony D, and his. I don't want to say his goons because that's what they initially were saying, but he had a name for them. And
yes, he had a name. He had a name for him, and it brought me back to The Sopranos. It was a term that I had heard used in the Sopranos, and I'm not just going to take random stabs at it because I'll get it wrong and I'll sound ridiculous. Anyway, but
yes. But we got the resurgence. They came out last week and they came out again, and then instead of it helping Tony D'Angelo, and end up hurting him because we got, oh goodness, I need to get more sleep, Matthew.
No, we had that
Escobar.
That eventually brought out, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Coming in and pulling a Tanya Harding on Tony D'Angelo there. So it ended up working out in a great sequence because it still gave Von Wagner the win, even though there were some shenanigans, but it made him stand taller, if you will, and created a little bit more tension, or a lot more tension, I should say, between Escobar and Tony D'Angelo.
And we're not done with Von Wagner. We'll have a little bit more on him a little bit later in the rundown. But last night we did have the premiere of Nathan Frazier, or we were supposed to have the premiere of Nathan Frazier. It was actually interrupted by Grayson Waller. He attacked Frazier's opponent before the match could even start. This resulted in Waller getting a mic and addressing Chase U And then eventually he was attacked by Nathan Frazier. We saw Frazier and Andre Chase standing in. I believe we had some other Chase U members in the ring as well, too, standing tall. So apparently a little something there between Frazier and Grayson Waller, which I didn't mind. I feel like you've got so many people on NXT now that, the enhancement matches serve a purpose, but when you've got such a wide array of talent on the roster, maybe you can premiere somebody without necessarily a squash match. So it seems that they're hopping Frazier into a program with Waller right off the bat.
Yeah, it was kind of similar to last week when we had Roxanne Perez debut. I mean, it was a little different in the fact that she was supposed to debut the next week, but then she ended up getting her debut, where this time it was kind of vice versa in a way. But that's a great point, though, you just said. There is a way to highlight new talents coming in without putting them in a squash match, putting them in a strong program right off the bat. And since Grayson Waller, who from the inception of NXT 2.0 has really, really been pushed, I want to say to the top, because he hasn't gotten the championship yet, but he's definitely highlighted and spotlighted every single week, and the constant push for him as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, they brought Styles to work a program with him. I mean,
Yeah.
That right there it's some type of seal of approval. Speaking of new talent, we had Yulissa Leon and Valentina Feroz going up against Caden Carter and Katana Chance last night. Carter and Chance picking up the victory there. Leon and Feroz, their gimmick, is it like Rockettes or like a ballet type of deal? What do you think the takeaway is from? I'm trying to figure out what that gimmick is supposed to be.
I think it's them showcasing their their heritage, the celebratory dances about the culture, and I don't know, no one else is doing that. I like it. I
quite enjoyed it. I could not pinpoint the origin, but it was a nice little I thought it added a nice touch to the introduction. I like intros like that where the other competitors are in the ring waiting for them to finish whatever they're doing. Whether it be that or whether it be a rendition of, we used to have it with oh my goodness, going back years, 80s, early 90s. Who was the guy that would sing the was it the Russian national anthem? Man.
Bolsheviks?
Yes. Yeah. No. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm drawing a blank here. But
Nikolai Volkov.
Yes, Volkov was who I was thinking about. I've always enjoyed like the stuff that takes a little while and the opponent has to wait for them to finish what they're doing, and we got a little bit of that last night. So that kind of helped check that box for me. But we would see Legado del Fantasma picking up the victory over Josh Brigg and Fallon Henley. We had Brooks Jensen taken out backstage earlier, and we would eventually during this match get Robert Stone on the mic, letting everybody know that it was in fact Von Wagner that took him out. So we had a lot of Von Wagner kind of all over the program last night.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was hoping, I know we got the 6-person tag match, it ended up being 5-person, but I wanted a little bit more between Briggs, Henley, and
the other person.
I said this one time before when I was covering on a Wednesday morning. I keep thinking of Briggs and Stratton.
And Jensen.
Yes.
Well, and you've got Henley in there. You've got Henley in there as well too. So like your mind goes to like Glenn Fry or Joe Walsh or
John
something.
Henley.
So So there's a lot of shortcuts that the brain tries to make there.
And then Katana Chance as well, because it's still KC. Casey. Katie. I'm sorry. God, Catanzaro.
Yeah.
All right. So we were getting to.
It's so much. It's so much to keep. You got so many names, and then people changing names. It's like, man, I feel like JR with, Paige and Cage and Paige and Cage and Paige and Adam.
Yeah.
Now, two people that we do know, Solo Sikoa going up against Trick Williams as a little bit of a preview for next week's triple threat match. Solo Sikoa picking up the victory. We had Cameron Grimes on commentary to help build up Spring Break-In's next week's match between Grimes, Hayes, and Solo Sikoa. Your thoughts on this match and any anticipation on your part for the triple threat next week?
Yeah, I enjoy all three of their styles. I think this is another way to showcase the North American Championship on a high level stage. I liked how they had Sikoa there facing Trick Williams, but you still have Carmelo Hayes right there at ringside. You've got your champion Cameron Grimes. The kick at the end, Solo Sikoa had that looked like it was supposed to be for Carmelo, but got Cameron. I don't think it was necessarily for Carmelo. I think it's him just making a statement as well. I would be excited to see Solo Sikoa getting the championship potentially next week. I think, I know you and me have talked about, we love Cameron Grimes. But it is a different Cameron Grimes right now, which is fine because he's still awesome, tremendous talent. But I just feel within this title, maybe if there is a change up to it, I think it would be well received by the NXT audience, as you know, they're very vocal about chanting "ooh." So
exactly, and I don't think Grimes necessarily needs the title now.
Yeah.
Here's my take on it. Grimes winning the title was kind of the next phase in the Cameron Grimes character. Okay, we're trying to get him a little bit away from To the Moon, the guy that made all the money betting on GameStop, to a little bit more of seriousness with the character. And I think we got that, by him winning the title. And I don't think we necessarily need a very long title reign for him. And I think you're right. I think Sikoa could benefit from it in NXT storyline. Now, a lot of his lineage and stuff, if it's been talked about briefly, on commentary, a lot of that's just coming through from the crowd. So I don't know that. I think that he could benefit from that title right now a little more than Grimes can or is, and that would not surprise me one bit if that changes hands next week. We had another surprise appearance last night. The Viking Raiders coming down from the main roster, going up against Enofe and Blotto. Viking Raiders picking up the win, and that brought out the Creed brothers. We're getting Viking Raiders and Creed brothers next week at Spring Break-In.
Yeah, NXT continuing their formula of bringing in Raw or SmackDown talents to help elevate their stars, or just it seems like bringing in the talents from Raw and SmackDown is going to continue to be a regular thing. And at one point, especially when NXT branched out to be 2.0, it seemed like at that point it was going to be something we're just going to really separate from WWE for the most part, at least, broadcasted like a whole separate entity. But then we had Dolph Ziggler come in and become champion, and then now we have Natty. We've had AJ Styles there, and I know you guys have touched on this a lot, covering Wednesday mornings. But I also noticed too, and it's been becoming more and more regularly. You have Vic Joseph and Wade Barrett. Excuse me, I was going to say bad news. Reminding us, the audience, what happened on Raw. What is going to happen as we look ahead to SmackDown this week as well. So I think, I am enjoying this. I think it's great for the NXT audience. I would say majority of them do watch the other programmings within WWE, and it's a nice surprise when they do get someone from the main rosters coming down and getting to see them on a somewhat regular basis. I think that's great.
So a lot of the, and this was never anything officially confirmed, but a lot of the conversation between the original NXT and people going from the original NXT to the main roster was you still had a, almost a separate company was the way it was presented that still had quite a departure from a lot of the stylistic elements of what they were doing on the main roster. So you would have people get to the main roster and it's still I feel like the original NXT, you still had that hair of an independent work environment that wasn't necessarily main roster. And so now my take and kind of what I've garnered from this new NXT 2.0 is they're trying to make it have much more of a main roster feel. That's why you're getting some of the over the top gimmicks where you go back to original NXT, you've got people with a first and a last name. You didn't have Italian mobster gimmicks.
Yeah.
You didn't have people coming out in their pajamas. So, I mean, and not that you necessarily have that on the main roster and not that you necessarily should, but it is definitely a different feel now. And I think that, maybe part of kind of having main roster talent, it can get more eyes on it, but you're trying to make sure that NXT, which you're using as your developmental, is more of the same fishbowl than maybe the original NXT was, which really truly felt like, a completely independent company that was independent of WWE, even though it wasn't. Speaking of, before we go to the next match, I was going to have a nice little segue. We were going to talk about former talent and Mandy Rose, but I want to go to a promo that I was not necessarily expecting. We got a Wes Lee promo, formerly of
MSK.
Yes. And my goodness, this was effective. I mean, he addressed them, having the titles taken away, but of course did not mention his tag team partner's name. But he is being repackaged and being repackaged fairly quick as himself, as somebody who is trying to basically make a splash as a singles competitor. I like this, and I like the fact that it's being addressed. I don't think you ever have to address it again. But the simple fact that he's saying, hey, it's one thing losing a title, and then it's one thing having it taken away.
Yeah. This is what I was speculating last week, where he was on and wearing a WWE Performance Center t-shirt, seeming down on himself and just feeling lost, I should say, not really down, but just really lost in what was happening. And then we got to see that promo, which was great to see. And, it's ironic. I feel that if they're repackaging him, I thought perhaps Wes Lee would now, if we're going to, give different names to some of the talents, I felt this could have been one that would have made more sense, just because you're trying to pull away from MSK as a whole.
Yeah.
But he's still one as Wes Lee. But then we also got the promo from formerly known as Kaylee Ray. Now she's Alba Fire.
Yes. So for every name we have that stays the same, we have another one that changes.
Which works for her, because she still had the bat and the fire. But it's another. It's another it's not necessarily repackaging, because it seems like a lot of stuff they're same gimmick, the same characters, but there's I don't know if we'll get explained a lot of the name changes. I mean, some of the names getting shortened, I can see that. Kind of like, I'm going to use Matt Riddle as an example. Yeah, shortened to Riddle, and we've all become accustomed to that, and we've seen that recently with some other stars as well. But anyways, I digress.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, and I think we kind of touched on it earlier, when we were talking about the AEW women's division. I think WWE really views the fans as having a much short-term memory than AEW does their fan base, or the simple fact that everything is in the WWE universe and you can at any time hit reset and make yourself a new character. It's a very interesting comparison, kind of, when you look at how often WWE, especially as of late, has hit the reset button on characters' names. But speaking of former main roster talent, Mandy Rose taking on Roxanne Perez. Mandy Rose picked up the victory. I thought this was a really good match. Perez looked good. There was some finger biting and selling of the hand from on Rose's part, but a lot of the takeaway from this is what happened at the end of this match. Mandy Chu came out and she caught Toxic Attraction in a net, and then Roxanne Perez and Mandy Chu proceeded to shoot Toxic Attraction with Silly String.
Yeah. Well, I was honestly expecting some goop to fall from the ceiling once I saw the not a lever, but the button.
Yeah,
she had
going back to DX and Shane and Vince. Yeah,
with the Spirit Squad, yes, or even more recently, Edge, when the goop fell on where the brood kind of goop fell onto. Oh gosh, who did he get with that?
Oh my goodness. Who was he feud? Was it Rollins at that point? Was he feuding with Rollins?
Oh my god.
That might have been the build up to SummerSlam when he was feuding with Rollins. Maybe.
We'll look into that for everyone. But instead we got the net. I'm like, oh well, there's Toxic Attraction getting caught in traps and nets again, like they were not too long ago with Corey. But instead the Silly String, that made a little sense, made it a little, funny haha in the end. And I guess that works with Wendy Chu, and then obviously with Roxanne Perez as well. If this leads to some type of tag match between them and Toxic Attraction, I'd be into it. Different styles,
Or is it perhaps like a net on a pole, like whoever accesses the net first gets to use the net or the Silly String, or
Silly String's no, that's got to be the Silly String on a pole match.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing too, like when NXT 2.0, when they had the change from original to NXT 2.0, like one of the first things that this reminded me of was Funhouse, the game show from the late 80s, early 90s.
Rock.
Yes. And so now when I'm seeing nets and seeing Silly String, I just like the next thing I need is somebody to like run and slide into a giant pie or something, like that's all I need.
Yeah, it's like a gigantic bobbing for apples kind of.
Yes. So I don't know that I ever. So me and Mead had initially had this discussion, and he thought I was talking about something else, and I thought he was talking about something else. Or no, I think it was UHF. This reminded him of a clip from the Weird Al movie. And anyway, so I digress. But my Funhouse story was I was an avid watcher of Funhouse every afternoon on, I think it was my local Fox affiliate.
I think for me too.
Yeah. And so they were going to do this big thing where they were building like the Super Funhouse, and they were going to change the set, and it was going to go to Super Funhouse. And I mean, this was at whatever point this was, my great aunt that I was staying with just had off-air, network TV, no cable or anything, and very rarely ever, got like a TV guide or a newspaper or looked at the listings or whatever. So the day that Funhouse was supposed to shift to the Mega Funhouse, another show came on. It was like People's Court or something. And I was so upset and so disappointed because I guess my Fox affiliate at that point had dropped Funhouse.
Oh, it's been heartbreaking as a child.
Yeah, I really need to go and see if I can find that on YouTube or see if that's on any streaming platform, because I just completely fell off of Funhouse, and I don't know what happened. I don't know what the Mega Funhouse looked like or the Super Funhouse or whatever. Maybe that's something I need to take back up. However, we would close the show last night with a Joe Gacy promo, and you and I talked a little bit about this off air. Joe Gacy was one of my initial favorite characters off of NXT 2.0. I thought it was very unique. Joe Gacy talking about how he was going to make sure the ring was a safe space and it was a non-judgmental zone. And, he was a heel because he was trying to get on your nerves, but he wasn't doing anything too dastardly. He would pick the person up after the match and shake their hand. And I liked where they were going. In the last month in this program they've been running with him and Braun Breaker, they've completely shifted gears, and he has now become this sadistic guy with druids that kidnaps people's father Gacy was coming out saying that after we saw him push Braun Breaker off of a platform last week, that he had it on good authority that Breaker was not clear to wrestle next week at Spring Break-In. We did have Rick Steiner come out and say that no, in fact, that he had it on good authority from his son that he was cleared to wrestle. And as the Druids were going to hop in the ring, Braun Breaker comes out and cleans house. That's the way that we went off the air. My overall take is I really have enjoyed Gacy. I like having Gacy towards the top of the card. But my goodness, this feels like it has been a complete 180 on the Gacy character, and I'm not sure that it's been for the best.
You know, you had mentioned Joe Gacy doing things not quite dastardly, but we had Harlan, who I think did the majority of that just by the beatdowns that he had, but still them together, they were still doing the whole, accepting of everyone, no judgments kind of thing. And then when we saw, what was your word for the guys on the black cloaks?
Yes. Did I call them Druids?
Yes. It made me think, I mentioned this last week, it reminded me of like a fraternity hazing. So I was thinking with all the Chase U guys there at ringside that we can have something there, thinking back to Animal House, Revenge of the Nerds, that kind of stuff with hazing on back. I don't know if that's allowed anymore, so I won't go there. However, you're right. This has been a 180 from Joe Gacy. Very different. We always knew that, he was meant to be a little odd, a little creepy, but not really sure where to go with what direction, what you think he'll do,
Yes.
kind of, it just kind of left you open-ended, like not really sure. But now we're seeing bug-eyed Joe Gacy, a little bit more scary, a little bit more stuff coming out, and he's got the Druids, is that the right word, there as well, to try to help and protect him. But no, Braun Breaker coming in to save his pops there. And and though we still have Joe Gacy standing tall, this is something for Spring Break-In that I don't know. I feel like this would have been something where there was some type of stipulation just because of all the wackiness that's been leading up to it. But I think going into next week, Braun Breaker still has a strong shot at holding onto that title. But I don't know. Looks like there might be some interference, though. We got the Druids there. Or maybe his dad will be at ringside. That might distract him. Does Harlan returns? Joe Gacy do another complete 180 this time? I don't know.
Is there a dog involved? I mean, his dad was, noted for carrying a dog. I mean, maybe a dog gets involved in this match. I mean, there's a lot of different ways it can go. I think another thing that feels kind of strange to me about this angle is the production with the Druids, the production with Breaker going off of that podium last week. It seems like there's a lot of production for a place that size. The way that the NXT 2.0 studio is lit up and just the overall feel, it feels a little bit low budget to me. And I think it's because you've got so much of that stuff that kind of does need some high-end production, I think, to breathe in that small space. So that might be a little bit of the disconnect for me. But speaking of disconnect, we are going to disconnect from your ears, listeners. That has been us for this morning. Make sure to join us tomorrow morning when me and the man they call Meathead break down AEW Dynamite, and we'll also get some more thoughts from Meathead on his love of 501 jeans and his favorite Smothers brother. Join it. That's a tongue twister. Smothers brother. So Smothers is the last name, and brothers is brothers plural. But when you're talking about one Smothers brother, it's Smothers brother. So you've got the plural and then you've got the singular. So quite the tongue twister there. Nevertheless, join us for all that and more tomorrow morning. For Linda Kay, this is Matthew Thomas. We'll talk to you soon.